Hey guys, Coach Keith Kepner here. I want to give you guys some advice because I get asked oftentimes from all the wonderful people that we start off in boxing. They start from zero, start from like kind of, just box a little bit. And they ask, who should I be watching? Or, I'm like, you watch fights. And they're like, yeah, they don't really have good answers. Or inevitably, the typical names come out like the exciting people to watch, like maybe Mike Tyson is a big one. Overly watched. I know from my time when I boxed, I spent way too much time early on watching way too much Mike Tyson, right? Because you're watching for the knockouts and things like that instead of actually trying to watch for things that will actually make you a better fighter, all right? And that kind of leads me to what my advice is. And that's where I tell people to watch boxers that got to a high level or higher level because not of some extreme talent like a huge punch like Mike Tyson, let's say, not because some extreme reflexes or coordination or athleticism or insane conditioning that they possessed, but because of something that is way more important than all those things, and that's their foundation, that's their fundamentals, and that's the one thing that you can mimic. Because if, for instance, you're trying to mimic, let's say, Mike Tyson, who is gifted with not only extreme power but also extreme speed, and he's also built in a unique way, and he has all those three things together. It's going to be hard to mimic that, right? Because even if you're built like Mike Tyson, you're probably not going to be as fast as him, or maybe even if you're as fast as him and built like him, might not be as powerful as he is because he was extremely powerful. And again, also too, by the way, keep in mind, there's a way to beat that. All right, and maybe if you have a fighter that can only trains to fight one way, he won't be able to adjust in a situation where someone figures him out. All right, that's very important. And that's not necessarily to say that you need to be a jack of all trades, right? A master of none. I'm not saying that. You need to be able to be flexible, right? You need to be able to be well versed enough, and that comes from developing a certain amount of foundation and fundamental ability. A fundamentally sound fighter can fight going forward, can fight going backwards, can counterpunch, can move their head, can use their hands for defense, and can do a few other things with that. So you need to watch fighters that do those things and not only do them, but rely on them versus maybe trying to mimic, let's say, Roy Jones Jr. in his prime, where, yeah, it's so exciting and amazing to watch. And there are things you can take from it. But really, it's like taking an awesome lick or riff from a great musician or jazz player or something like that and implying that versus like just getting your basics. And especially if you're your first year into boxing or even a couple years into boxing, you need to be watching the basic stuff, right? Be watching for that and just like doubling down on that because that is going to bring you way more success. And also, it will cover up any holes you might have. Because remember, you can have a lot of flash, you can have a lot of speed, you can have athleticism, talent, a lot of things like that within yourself, right? Because some of us are gifted with those things. You might be gifted with a great chin, which can also be a great curse, by the way. But you might be gifted with something extraordinary or unique. But if that becomes your go-to and what you rely upon, you're gonna have trouble, right? You may go a long time before you have trouble, right? We all know a heavyweight champion recently that went a really long way and had trouble, right? When someone was able to deal with his biggest asset, all right? So you need to approach it like that. That's how a good coach approaches it, right? They don't just tell you what you do well, they tell you what you need to work on, what you need to do to expand, to be at least well rounded enough that you're not just rigidly stuck in one pattern. That's all you got. Because remember, if you're rigid, it's easy to break. You gotta be a little bit flexible. All right. And again, if you want to progress in boxing to a higher level, whether you're want to be a higher level amateur or whether you want to be a pro or a higher level pro, whatever level you're at with any combat sport or anything you're doing, you need to have some type of knowledge or ability or some basic understanding of all aspects of the game. Because if you don't, you're going to get caught cold by something, all right? And let's say someone's preparing to fight you, right? And they develop, because styles make fights, like the great Eddie Futch said, right? Who was the guy that coached the two gentlemen that beat Ali in his prime, Joe Frazier and Ken Norton. And both those guys beat Ali differently, all right? Because Futch understood that styles make fights. So therefore, let's say I'm a fighter and I have a certain style I always fight, and you're gonna be fighting me, and you guys prepare for how you're gonna fight me, and you have the answer for how to beat me. But what you see with great fighters is that a fighter might come in there with the answer to actually beat that fighter, but then that fighter adjusts, right? And isn't that what you see great fighters do? They adjust. Why? because they're not just stuck in one style. They're able to fight a couple different things. They're able to do a few different things. Yeah, that's not maybe what they're best at, but they're able to, and they know how to do that because they didn't just build up their whole career off of just some insane talent. Even with some of these guys, like to give you an example, like one that I was talking about last night, Gervonta Davis. I did a little fight study on him as an amateur, right? If you watch him as an amateur, he shows more of his different boxing ability than maybe you see in a lot of his early pro fights, or and up until kind of recently, you hadn't seen those things in the pro game. It was more of maybe him knocking out, like little basic things. He didn't look horrible or anything like that, but you're really starting to see his ability, like when he fought Rolly and had the discipline to sit back and then catch him coming in. So that's very, very important. And I can't tell you how many times if a guy or gal misses that aspect of the game of building up the solid foundations and also being well-rounded enough to deal with multiple different types of fighters and multiple different types of situations, right? Which again comes from that fundamental base. You're going to be sorry that you missed out on that, all right? So take that piece of advice when you're studying film. Let me give you some fighters that I recommend to watch that are basic, and not basic in a bad way, but basic in a good way, meaning they have good fundamentals and they have great success with that. Evander Holyfield in his prime, fairly basic fighter, nothing super crazy. Obviously, he's a heavyweight, so we can't all mimic the heavyweight speed and meaning slower and pace, which is less. But Evander Holyfield, great fighter to watch. And also, what's good though, by the way, as more of a beginner, you watch Evander Holyfield, everything is a little bit slower, right? It's easier to see, it's bigger, right? So therefore, you can kind of see all the little nuances a little bit easier than you can with some of the full speed guys, all right? Another one, Oscar De La Hoya, great fundamental base there. From multiple times I've studied him. Sugar Ray Leonard, obviously a great fundamental fighter. And of course, I'm leaving out a lot of names, all right? Don't judge me by that. And then one more I want to give you, Joe Louis. So that was somebody that my father's coach, Chuck Bodak, who worked with over 50 world champions, including he was the Olympic coach for Muhammad Ali, which Ali didn't make the list because when he fought, there was not that much of a fundamental base exhibited. I mean, I'm not saying he didn't have fundamentals, but he based a lot of it out of toughness, honestly. And speed, of course. Now, Joe Louis, though, he didn't have a great chin, so therefore he had to have what? Good defense. Because when he got caught clean, a lot of times he got dropped, all right? So it's a good thing, whether you have a good chin or not, to learn from someone like that, all right? He had big power, yeah, but that power is developed. According to his coach, Jack Blackburn, they had to work on Joe Louis's power. He wasn't knocking people out in the amateurs, all right? He wasn't destroying people like he did as a pro. Blackburn had to work on his balance, had to work on his coordination, on his patterns, on the way he used his body with his punches, snapped his shoulders, things like that, pivoted his feet with his punches, things like that. So that's the last fighter I'll leave you with there to study and make a study of. And you know what's beautiful is we live in this time that we do now where we have something like YouTube where you can watch every freaking fight that's ever been filmed probably, right? Wasn't like that back even when I started boxing, which was like mid 2000s, all right? Especially not before that. All right, guys, so get after studying some film, and whether you want to fight, compete, get to another level, or just you have appreciation for boxing, man, make a study of it.